Well, there is a lot of discussion, mostly online, only online, but it's an interesting discussion about the idea of what if, let's say, Joe Biden bows out of the race. Kamala Harris, VP, the natural replacement there. She has the only one that has legal access to the campaign money that Biden's raised. Kamala Harris, but who would be her vice president? How about the guy that came in second to Joe Biden in 2020? That's right. Kamala and Bernie Sanders, 2024. So I'm going to get to my thoughts. Would this be successful? That's one question. Would it actually happen? Is another question. So first, let's just go over some of what's been going on here. So there is this shared by Jackie, chaotic leftist on Twitter, saying this screenshot should be shared anytime someone objects to Biden not running for re-election. So a shot from CNN here. Incumbents trailing before and after first debate. Notice a trend here. They all lost. So, not a good sign. Not a good sign. There's also this is, I'm not going to play all these because there's like 4 or 5 of them. But every question from the press here to the White House is about Joe Biden stepping down. Let's just touch on a few.
Is President Biden considering stepping down?
Absolutely not. And you heard, I believe, directly from the campaign as well.
Given the groundswell of concern from fellow Democrats, from donors, from supporters, doesn't he owe it to the American public to reflect on whether he should step down?
I mean, look, very much into Sung Min's question, and my answer to her question, where he had an opportunity to talk to supporters. He's done it a couple times.
Okay, we get it. Boring. But it just every single question.
The president, and I know you will remember this, back in 2020, referred to himself as a transition candidate. He also said back...
Again, he's a British. Does he still believe that? And then she goes on to say, yes, he is, but that's why he chose Kamala Harris as the VP, but that doesn't mean he's dropping out. Another question. How is it the president was still tired 12 days after returning from Europe? So this goes to one of the defenses that the White House used about his debate performance is that, he was just traveling Europe, which happened 2 weeks prior to the debate. He had been home for a couple of weeks already. Look, here's the reality. He is elderly. Joe Biden, yes, is old. Now, not everyone his age acts this. Bernie Sanders is older than Joe Biden. Does not have Joe Biden's same issues. But I would think the average person that is around Joe Biden's age or a little older tends to lose a bit of a step. So even like blaming the trip to Europe, I think is just ridiculous. They should just say, I mean, they're not going to say this, but they should just say, he's an old man. He's tired because he does a lot of speeches. He moves around a lot. He talks a lot. Though, there's a graph showing how many appearances he's had. I should say, I think it's how many press conferences he's had to other recent presidents, and it's not as many as others up to this point in his term. That said, age is obviously a factor here. And just, I'm going to play this because this is a little funny.
Can you say more about the duty piece?
He's absolutely running.
Yeah. Well, he's saying that, and I'm sharing with you his view.
And we would invite the president to come here and tell us that directly.
Noted, Kelly.
But if he's awake.
That's inappropriate.
As you heard from your colleague, the president of the WHCA, that's inappropriate.
Okay. Just somebody making a little quip there. I mean, it is. You could argue that's inappropriate to say if he's awake, but doesn't mean it's inaccurate. Now, the Biden campaign apparently put this digital ad out on their Facebook page.
And the contrast is clear. Look at what happened during the course of the debate. Donald Trump lied over and over and over again, as he is wont to do. He would not disavow what happened on January 6th. He would not give a clear answer on whether he would stand by the election results this November. He went back and forth about where he stands on one of the most critical issues of freedom in America, which is the right of a woman to make decisions about their own body. He has been completely ambiguous and all over the place about where he stands on that issue, despite the fact that he hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade, and that's exactly what they did.
That is a great clip to use in an ad. You cannot find a Joe Biden clip from the past 2 years, maybe more, that even comes close to something like that. Kamala Harris, you know, you can go back to 2020. I think she didn't do too well in the primary in 2020. She had like one good debate performance, and a lot of that was because she criticized Joe Biden. And then as it went on, she wavered on Medicare for all. She wavered on several other issues, and just her campaign fell apart. And really, if you go back and look, I think I covered that at the time. Her campaign really began to fall apart when she backed off of Medicare for all, interestingly enough. But in this race, where it's really about highlighting the disaster that Trump is and what he has caused since he was in, especially as it applies to the Supreme Court, and I mean, this being a referendum on abortion rights and having potentially the first female president running, I think is symbolic in itself. But also just Harris's ability to communicate clearly, forcefully, with passion, with anger. That is very important in a race like this. And also be able to communicate the successes that have occurred under this administration, especially as it applies to workers' rights. So there is so, just seeing this made me not realize, because I knew this already, but just it clarified how much better Kamala Harris would be in this campaign compared to Joe Biden. Now, this gets to so I think this is the first, from what I saw, this was the guy to really popularize this idea. Though I'm sure someone else mentioned it first. But Dox, whatever the name is, Dax, Harris Sanders ticket can unite all the factions of the Democratic Party. I agree. Now, before I get to more thoughts in here, Elie Mystal, who I often quote when it comes to opinions on Supreme Court rulings, writing here, a Harris Sanders ticket reconstitutes the Obama coalition. Just saying. I'm going to finish my drink now. And Jordan Ewell, what a Harris Sanders ticket would look like. Only losing Florida, which I think is, losing Florida for sure would be accurate. Florida hates Bernie Sanders. But it would be amazing. It may not be this. It'd be close. But all right, let's get to the first. Would this be successful? Before we get to the, is this realistic? Would this be successful? Hell yes. I think this does unite both sides of the party. Kamala Harris satisfies the Democratic base that was going to vote for Joe Biden anyways. She excites party members and donors that were concerned about Biden's health. She essentially is able to continue what Joe Biden has, but in a much younger and someone who can actually communicate and can campaign. Bernie Sanders brings out a more left-leaning coalition of people who were sour about Biden both in 2020, but are concerned now about his ability to beat Donald Trump. It also immediately addresses Biden's major political weakness, which I think is Israel, as Bernie Sanders has been the most vocal Democratic, or not Democratic, he's independent, but most vocal senator that has been critical of the Israeli government and their ongoing mass atrocities. So this would dominate. Now, there would be some weird losers out there that don't like Bernie Sanders because he's actually worked to help people his entire life and has actual principles, and they hate people that actually care. So some of those weird losers out there that exist, especially as it applies to people who are, intertwined with massive corporations. Yeah, you're gonna maybe lose them, maybe annoy them. That is not the majority of people. A lot of people that don't normally vote would come out to vote for this ticket. That is why, people will bring up this idea. Oh, if Bernie's so popular, why couldn't he win a primary? The primary electorate is much different than a general election. Primary speaks to Democratic, actual registered Democrats. It is a narrow swath of people that have to be registered as a Democrat. Not even mentioning here, Bernie is an independent. That's part of his appeal. The appeal Bernie has in a general that he doesn't have in a primary is that he's able to bring out people that weren't registered to vote, that would not normally vote. But he speaks to those people because he speaks to real working class issues and has a long history of speaking to those issues. All right, that aside, would this actually happen? No, of course not. Like, there's a few issues here. First, the Kamala side, yes, that could happen again if Biden is not the candidate. But on the Bernie side, first of all, before I even get to the major issue, they're going to talk about his age. Bernie is older than Joe Biden. The biggest issue with Joe Biden is his age. Now, Bernie, of course, if you've seen him recently, he is perfectly fine. He's as sharp as ever. He hasn't lost a step. But the number, the age, is still going to be a problem for some people. I don't think it's a problem for voters as much as it's a problem for Democratic, leadership. That said, the bigger problem and the bigger barrier for him is the same barrier that's been there since his first run. It's that he's a threat to massive corporations and CEOs, and by extension, a threat to corporate donors. So it would have to be like some kind of primary process for him to somehow end up on this ticket in any way. They're not going to choose him. So there is zero chance of Bernie Sanders appearing on a ticket with Kamala Harris. But that doesn't mean it wouldn't be successful. That is what is so a lot of times so frustrating about politics, is that oftentimes the thing that makes the most sense simply doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen because what makes logical sense, what's rational, what's best for people is not what is prioritized.